All right, you guys, happy Thursday. Apparently, the Trump administration completely crashed out over the Epstein files. That's at least according to the New York Times. They did that long article regarding how the administration got together, strategizing over how to deal with the files, how they were going to address the public or misdirect the public. Obviously, Pam Bondi, the Binder episode. The Epstein files became the source of a lot of attention, so much so that Trump decided to meet with his top officials in the Situation Room to work through a public plan. The Situation Room, that's not what the Situation Room is for, you guys. Situation Room in the White House is supposed to be reserved for highly classified national security concerns, not to deal with a random pedophile, should be, who controlled a global trafficking network. Why is it that our nation's top brass consider Jeffrey Epstein to be a national security concern? And I don't want you guys to forget that I broke the story that the day before the administration was forced to drop those files online, many of which were redacted and removed for crappy reasons. They're still protecting people. Don't forget that. But the day before, Andrew Colvett was mysteriously seen at the White House, particularly in the executive office building. He attempted at the same time to fake a live show. What I mean is essentially he pre-recorded a Charlie Kirk show with Kash Patel as his guest. Perfect. Kash Patel was helping him do this to present as though he was in Arizona, when in fact, Andrew Colvett was in Washington, D.C., taking a meeting. My question is with who and regarding what? Because when I broke the story, I had no idea the next day that they would be dropping the Epstein files. Now that seems a little bit, the timing of it, a bit suspicious. And I just realized that we should formally file an FOIA request to get to the bottom of that. Who was Andrew Colvett meeting with at the White House? Because there seems to me to be a lot of proximity to Jeffrey Epstein in the Charlie Kirk story. And that's what I want to discuss today. Welcome back to Candace. Are we living in Epstein Nation? Are you guys starting to feel like we're living in Jeffrey Epstein Nation, that everybody that pretends to be successful authentically is somehow tied into a broader network? I'm just going to ask that question. Quickly at the top here, I also want to note that I slightly misspoke yesterday, and it needs clarification. I briefly mentioned that when Erica came into Charlie's life, it was just as Jeffrey Epstein went down. And I said it was within the same month that he committed suicide. That's inaccurate, actually. That timeline needs to be slightly adjusted. It wasn't when he fake committed suicide. It was rather when Charlie and Erica went on their first date in August of 2018. That was the exact same time frame when the Epstein scandal initially broke out, right? It was the unsealing of a lawsuit between Ghislaine Maxwell and Virginia, the young woman who was at the source of the Epstein scandal, a defamation lawsuit. And it led to this massive expose in the Miami Herald, a full piece on Jeffrey Epstein, the sweet deal that he got despite his admission of what he had done to underage girls. And that piece was eventually published. It was like a big brewing of a storm. And then the piece dropped in November of 2018. So essentially 2018 was the year that everything began to unravel. And in my mind, I feel that the entire Epstein network then pivoted and simply reemerged elsewhere, because a global network of that size is not just going to go away. That's not how these things work. It is way too profitable to evil people. His trafficking network, I should remind you, we were working on our Epstein series leading up to Charlie's assassination. Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking network was once deeply embedded in the pageantry and modeling world. Okay, I find it suspicious now that Donald Trump, when he knew him, was running Miss Universe pageantry. It seems like the perfect kind of a place that Jeffrey Epstein would run women through, right? Particularly women from Eastern Europe. He found young, impoverished minors from war-torn countries, wars that were being waged because of the actions of our government. And then he funneled them into modeling agencies and across Victoria's Secret runways while the world oohed and awed at their beauty and their fresh faces, never imagining that something so sadistic and perverse could be sitting just beneath. And it is the very reason why, when we discovered that Erica Kirk, or I should say Erica Francfay, while she was living in New York City, was hanging around, we discovered she was hanging around at the Next Model Management offices, which was a talent agency that was run by close Jeffrey Epstein friend Faith Cates. We had questions. Again, the people who worked there alleged that Erica was the point of contact for the model apartment, and they find it to be suspicious because Jeffrey Epstein was often at their offices. These Eastern European women that they were bringing in for quote unquote suits, described as men involved in the business, and a lot of these women, they reflect, sort of disappeared. Where did a lot of these women go? Brings a reasonable question, an easy question, by the way, to answer. Did Erica Francfay in any way have any association with the Jeffrey Epstein orbit? Because it's not clear what she was doing while she was in New York. Faith Cates, I should mention, never turned her back on Jeffrey Epstein. She supported him even after that 2009 arrest. And like I said, there were so many Eastern European models that were being brought through her office, many of whom were subsequently then flown to parties in the Virgin Islands. It is also a fair question to ask, what does Erica know about those models? What was she doing with those apartments? Who exactly linked her with this office? What were her qualifications? There might be a reasonable explanation, but I'd like to hear it because Erica Kirk now has access to American high school students via Turning Point's Club America. She's speaking at high schools across the country. And in my view, no parent in the United States or abroad should accept a Turning Point USA high school chapter in their child's school without a very clear understanding of what Erica was doing in association with Next Model Management. That's easy. That's easy. If you asked me, Candace, I would just answer the question. Being a widow does not remove you from having to answer a question of this magnitude. And there's more, you guys. Since everyone, including Trump, seems to run tangential to the Epstein network and Eastern Europe, everyone having to deny, oh, I knew him. Trump's like, I employed Virginia Giuffre. I employed her at Mar-a-Lago, but I once kicked Jeffrey Epstein out. Well, we hung out at parties, but I kicked him out for other reasons. Truly, I think the reason that they had a disagreement, it was actually over a real estate deal. It wasn't because of Jeffrey Epstein's parties or anything inappropriate that he was doing. But it's weird. It's like his name just keeps coming up. And then we learn that he's calling Charlie Kirk, right? He's and upset about Charlie Kirk allowing people to roast the Epstein network, demanding clarity. And when you read that New York Times article, it makes it seem like Trump just never wanted these files to be released. Was he protecting his donors? Well, obviously he's protecting his donors, but who else is he protecting? What does he know about the Epstein network? What files are they still holding, asserting that the reason is because children are harmed? We're protecting the victims. That's the reason we're withholding this information. I don't buy that for 1 second. And this next discovery that I made, that it just seemed like another chef's kiss, if you will. Now, we told you that we identified the office that organized the now infamous SAM 702 flight. This is our Fort Huachuca plane. It caused the Huachuca panic, the Huachuca Cabra. They couldn't deal with it. They sent the influencers out to destroy Mitch Snow. The plane that flew to Tucson, Arizona on September 8th, 2 days before Charlie's assassination, landed and hung out in Tucson for about 4 hours before it carried on to the intel base in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where it stayed overnight. Now, before it departed for El Paso, Texas, the next morning, mid-morning on the 9th, it leaves for Texas. Now, the person whose office organized that plane is the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, a man named Bradley Hansel. We told you about him, about how he used to work for the Boston Consulting Group. Mitt Romney and Bibi Netanyahu became best friends over there. That plane has been a source of interest due to a meeting which Mitch Snow stumbled upon that morning accidentally, and the meeting in which Mitch Snow believes that he saw Brian Harpole. Okay? Maybe he didn't. I was always open to that, but the reaction that we experienced to Fort Huachuca tells me he saw somebody important. He saw somebody important. Also of interest to us is whether or not Bradley Hansel may have stayed the night on the base in the same hotel that Mitch Snow believes that he saw Erica Kirk. He said it was her eyes that were unmistakable. They saw her in that lobby on the 8th, leaving, jumping into a green pickup truck, and her eyes reminded him of an ex-girlfriend's eyes, and that's why he clocked her. He didn't know her, obviously, right when he saw her, but remembered her eyes when he then saw her on stage at the Charlie Kirk Memorial event. Now, of course, we tried to do things the right way, as we always do. We attempted to simply FOIA request these details. We asked Brian Harpel for a clear alibi. We've asked Erica for a clear alibi. We don't want to spend time on something that amounts to nothing. There are a lot of, threads that we need to pull, and we don't need to just be, for fun, trying to make a conspiracy. We just can't seem to get any alibis. We got some kids that Andrew Colvett said were Erica's and then said, okay, no, they're not Erica's, or Paramount Not So Tactical said, no, they're not Erica's. It doesn't matter if they're Erica's. It's been a disaster. Yet we were informed when we filed our FOIA request that we were kind of put in the back of the queue because our request falls under this heavy burden exception. They need to coordinate with multiple departments, and we're number 3,500 to hear back. Okay. Seems like a bit of a workaround. Well, we initially told you that Bradley Hansel reports directly to Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, but actually, we weren't entirely correct. There is one man in between Bradley and Pete Hegseth, a man named Stephen Feinberg, who occupies the position of Deputy Secretary of Defense. Now, lock in because this is important, okay? I'm going to show you a chart of the Department of Defense. Now, I guess they renamed it the Department of War. Kind of appropriate since all Trump has been doing is putting us in multiple wars. But here's that chart, and we're just putting faces where it's relevant. So at the top, you have Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense. The Deputy Secretary of Defense, meaning if anything happens to Pete Hegseth, this man assumes his position, Stephen Feinberg, okay? And then you see that next line of who sits beneath, and it is our man, Sam 702, his office that called the plane, don't know who else is on the plane, Bradley Hansel, okay? U.S. Secretary of Defense Intelligence. Now, who is Stephen Feinberg, though? Because that's kind of an important thing to know. There's also some rumblings that Pete Hegseth might be fired. If he is fired, this is going to be the number one guy in the Office of War. So who is Stephen Feinberg? Why did Trump select him? What we can state definitively is that he is the wealthiest person in the Trump administration. I always find it a little weird when you got somebody who's like worth $5 billion like this guy, and you're like, hey, I'd like to be the Undersecretary for War. Really? Why? Why is he so rich, by the way? Well, in 1992, he co-founded Cerberus Capital Management. Now, if you're wondering who Cerberus is, it's Hades' dog. It goes back to Greek mythology, the three-headed dog for Hades, which just makes me laugh because we were just covering Nat Rothschild's boat, which is the 9th planet, Pluto, Hades. They love it. They love like the underworld or something. Like, what should we name it? Let's name it Satan. I like Satan. How about Satan? Is that a nice name? And then they're like, yeah, that's a nice name. Let's do it. Anyways, Cerberus Capital Management is a fund with 70 billion AUM. That's assets that are under their management, 70 billion. Stephen Feinberg was one half. He's a co-founder, and that's why he was a controversial pick, not just because of his extraordinary wealth, but more specifically due to one particular asset which came under their management portfolio in 2010, DynCorp, a major private security company. Now, it is important that you understand what we mean when we say a private security company, because you've heard this many times. Oh, he owns a private security company. We mean a private military company, a mercenary group, a privately held military that can be contracted to do work on behalf of the armed forces anywhere in the world. So to give you an example, when the United States government wants to sort of keep their hands clean, like when they wanted to, topple Gaddafi in Libya, they'll go out and find a private military contractor because, well, a private military contractor can do things that the government can't, but the government can pay them to do those things, right? They can, for example, organize deals to sell weapons and arm rebels. And then the United States government is like, we didn't know. We gave them money to do security for us in Libya, We didn't know they were arming rebels. We had no idea. That's crazy. These mercenaries are usually made up of veterans, former special forces guys all around the world, maybe some thugs and criminals who are willing to do the dirty work for money. Now, I am going to overstate this because you need to comprehend this. The U.S. military, supported by our tax dollars, can then go and contract a private military company to do things that they don't necessarily want to have on the books. We finance, in effect, plausible deniability, right? Now, one name in this space, one company in this private military space that you're probably familiar with is Blackwater. A lot of people have heard of Blackwater. And I'm using them as an example so that you can understand how lucrative this business of private military security is. Blackwater in total received $2 billion in government contracts between 1997 and 2010, really up until a terrible massacre took place in Iraq, which landed 4 of their men in prison. They killed 17 Iraqi civilians and injured 14 Iraqi civilians and injured 20 others while escorting a U.S. embassy convoy. Again, we just asked them to escort us. They killed 14 civilians. Like I said, 4 men were convicted, 1 of murder, 3 others of manslaughter charges. But no worries, because when Trump got into office the first time around, he pardoned all of them. Very controversial, but all of them got pardoned, so they're free. Kind of makes sense if you know in the background that in the first administration, he selected Betsy DeVos as his Secretary of Education. And Betsy DeVos' brother is a man named Eric Prince, who is the founder of Blackwater. So it's all a little inside baseball going on there. Anyway, I'm overstating that so that you understand why Steven Feinberg, outright owning a military mercenary group from 2010 through to 2020, he joined Trump administration in 2017, the first go around. You can see why it was in fact controversial, because there's no way that that's not going to shape foreign policy. There's no way that that's not going to be some wheeling and dealing behind the scenes to influence, to make sure that your investments are protected. DynCorp itself, however, right, who they fully owned it, is particularly controversial. Controversial enough to have had an entire movie made based off of their incredibly scandalous history. Now I'll ask you guys, just for funsies, what do you think DynCorp employees were caught doing that was scandalous? And where? What and where? I'll ask you guys. Okay, I'll give you a little bit of a time frame. The scandal began to take shape in the 1990s until the whistle was finally blown in the early 2000s. Movie made in 2010. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Well, if you guessed that the region that it took place was in Eastern Europe, please give yourself a pat on the back. And if you also guessed that they were caught, I don't know, Candace, human sex trafficking, plus accused of forced child prostitution and rape, then you've probably just been paying attention to the various connecting themes on our chart that I can't get over. Yes, that is what happened. Catherine Bolkovac, a DynCorp investigator in Bosnia, discovered that several DynCorp employees were involved in purchasing underage women and facilitating sex trafficking. Another employee, Ben Johnston, filed similar reports. Both were then fired by the company, which has a base in Virginia, in Texas. She was trained in Texas, in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And when they exposed the abuses, they got fired. That's weird. She didn't let it go. Fortunately, she took a duffel bag, saved the paperwork, really risked her life. Could you imagine trying to get this information out when there's a mercenary group hunting you? And I want to be clear, because I downloaded her book over this past weekend and was speed reading through it, that the trafficked underage women were coming from Ukraine, Croatia, Bosnia, and of course, Romania. Romania was a big feature of where these trafficked women were coming from. Well, how did it work? I told you guys this yesterday. You have to comprehend how it works. First, find a region that's been torn up by war, because anything goes, right? I don't care if it, or maybe it can even be a hurricane, like Haiti. Be a hurricane. Find a area that has disasters and then say, we're America and we want to help. At first, you have to send the quote unquote peace officers. This time, That's what they send from the United Nations. And as I told you, they send those charitable people first, and they're really just kind of scouting. And in this case, it was the International Police Task Force. That was an arm of the United Nations Civilian Police Force. They were created by NATO because the war in Bosnia ended and Bill Clinton was president, and the peace accords were signed in Ohio, in Dayton, Ohio, or created in Dayton, Ohio, I think signed in Paris. And then they said, okay, well, obviously every time America's here, NATO, we're the good guys. It's peace. And they installed the International Police Task Force because who could question the UN? Except they were exactly the ones who were charged with trafficking the children, covering it up, the United Nations, DynCorp, forcing them into prostitution. I mean, the way that they did it too, like knowing that these impoverished young women would want a job, offering them like roles as a beautician, and then taking their passports and forcing them into prostitution over the border. Unbelievable. NATO is so corrupt. It is just so shocking to me that they still pretend to be the good guys after they get caught doing stuff like this over and over again. It is exactly as I told you. Everything evil seems to be disguised as charity and peace and faith these days. Is it me? Right? It's biblical. It's peace. I'm on a biblical mission just in this region where there just happens to be so many kids that are going missing. Anyway, DynCorp got caught. This woman, like I said, risked her life, and she took the documents and she proved what was going on. She revealed to the world that our own government and military was involved in this. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yet despite reporting that the officers were indeed at DynCorp trafficking, prostituting, and raping the victims, they got to enjoy immunity. That's one of the rules that we set up. It's like, hey, our military is going to come help, but we need to establish a couple of rules. And one of them is that no matter what our guys do, we get immunity. That's how it works. Military contractors don't have to suffer any prosecution in foreign territories. So in the end, DynCorp got off scot-free and just continued their relationship with the United States government. Now, when her movie about the scandal came out in 2010, DynCorp sold to Steven Feinberg's Cerberus. It was owned by Cerberus for the next 10 years. And so what are we to make about this? How are we to take this information? How is it possible that everybody's homies is doing charity or getting caught in human trafficking allegations? It can't be a thing. It just can't be a thing. I don't see Trump as a good guy in this. I believe the New York Times article was very well sourced, and I believe that one of their obvious sources, to me, as I read the article, seemed like it was Dan Bongino. They tried to make him look like the good guy who really wanted the Epstein files to get out and sacrificed his podcast and would have been privy to these discussions. I'm sure they had many people that were leaking to them, but Dan Bongino seems to be an obvious one to me when I read the article, that this was their panic, figuring out how to dupe the people and try to blame Democrats or blame the SDNY for why they couldn't get the files out. All of this scheming and planning. Why? To protect who? To protect people that are in your own administration, their corporations, their financial interests. I know since Steven Feinberg has said that he has divested from Cerberus Capital, but that kind of always just means like it's on hold, and he still does have financial ties to them, which are unclear. What are we doing with the mercenary group? Why do we have any ties to them? Was he reporting to him? Can we FOIA his emails perhaps during those days? Who else was on this plane with Bradley Hansel? Why does it seem like we can't get anything that we FOIA? They just keep saying that it's like falls under the category of an undue burden. I don't buy any of this. I think the Trump administration is up to it. And from what I am told, they are trying to make it more difficult for people to FOIA requests, to be able to hold these documents as classified for a period of time. It is an unnatural relationship to me that is unfolding between the Trump administration and Turning Point USA. That doesn't feel like it's for Charlie, as they always say. It's for Charlie. No, not at all. It seems like because secrets can sometimes make strange bedfellows. That's how it is being received by the public. It'd be pretty simple to slam dunk me on some of these points, Okay. It feels like a pretty easy one for Turning Point to come out and say, Erica has no idea what next model management is and has never been there. They're always around to debunk Project Constitution on things online. But when I say these things, which deeply matter and should matter, everyone's quiet. What about the email? Erica being listed as an emotional asset at the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting. Who recorded that? Why can't they give us that information? Since it was so natural and it organically came out, despite the fact that I am saying no, the Department of War, particularly the department that Bradley Hansel and Steven Feinberg and Pete Hegseth sit at the top of, were orchestrating messaging to artificially boost Erica. They wanted her as the #1 trend by morning. That was a focus of the Department of War. Why? Somebody make that make sense to me. I don't think it's just Charlie who's living in a Truman Show. I think we're all living in a Truman Show, and our government is involved in the most despicable crimes overseas. The most despicable crimes imaginable overseas. And they get people who are despicable enough to join them as they try to represent it to the American people as something faith-based, loved-based, #4Charlie-based, helping out orphans. But by the way, I forgot to tell you guys, there's another person in the Turning Point family that's involved in the ministry of orphans. How could we forget Mikey McCoy's wife, Elizabeth Kravchuk? Very wealthy Ukrainian. I believe she was born in Ukraine, by the way. Family claims that they escaped the Bolsheviks. LOL. Every time we tell you that we escaped the Bolsheviks, but now we're millionaires by the time we got here, LOL to anyone who buys that story. I actually hear that when she goes to Ukraine, there are SUVs waiting to escort her family. Ukraine is a laundromat. Okay? Nothing good comes out of Ukraine. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. But yes, her family's ministry is rescuing orphans in Ukraine. I forgot to tell you guys that. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. Here is their website, the Good Call Ministries, Rescue Operations, refugees, elderlies, orphans, handicapped. That is where their hearts are heavy. Specifically orphans. I like that. Helping Ukraine relief. Our hearts are heavy for the people of Ukraine, specifically the orphans. I am sure it is specific, and it is, well, who could question the Bible? People, they know Bible verses, so no, we shouldn't ask any more questions. There's so many pastors. Everyone's a pastor. I think her father or her grandfather's a pastor, so there's nothing left to say. Anyway, I really loved this comment from our show yesterday because it so perfectly sums up how odd all this is. This comment came from YouTube user Gnome2024. He writes, "My wife is from Ukraine, and we cannot even count 1% out of 100 that we know that are involved in helping kids in Ukraine." You're doing it wrong. Like I said, there is nothing good that comes, well, not like people out of Ukraine, but that comes out of Ukraine when it deals with our politicians. Everything that they have their hands in is corrupt. It has been the West's laundromat for a very long time. And least of all, the people that come here with tons of money from that region. We'll be right back after a brief break. All right, you guys, right now, there's a new generation of mothers and fathers that are rising up. Parents who want to be there for their babies, build strong families, and create a future that's filled with compassion, courage, and love. But for many expectant parents, that positive pregnancy test can initially feel completely overwhelming. They're asking themselves, can we do this? Are we ready? What will our future look like? That's exactly where my friends at PreBorn step in. Through PreBorn Network clinics, expectant parents receive a free ultrasound, compassionate care, parenting resources, and a conversation about the hope that is found in Jesus Christ. And when a mother and father see their baby on that ultrasound screen for the very first time, everything changes. Fear gives way to connection, uncertainty turns into hope, and suddenly a future filled with life feels very possible. That's why your support of PreBorn matters so much. For just $28, PreBorn can provide one free ultrasound and help equip a new generation of parents to choose life and build strong families. Donate, simply dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or visit preborn.com/Candace. Again, that's preborn.com/Candace. I also want to tell you guys about Ethos because life moves fast, and some of the moments that we treasure most are the ones that we never planned for. Laughing around the dinner table, cheering from the sidelines, bedtime stories, family road trips, or simply spending time together at home. While no one likes to think about the what ifs, having life insurance can make it easier to enjoy today without carrying tomorrow's worries. Provides reassurance that if the unexpected happens, your loved ones will have financial support when they need it most. Getting covered today is simpler, faster, and more affordable than many people realize. That's why I love Ethos, because with Ethos, you can apply online in just minutes. No medical exams, no waiting rooms, just answer a few health questions, and you could be covered the very same day. And what really stands out to me is that Ethos helps match you with coverage that actually fits your life, your goals, and your budget. With up to $3 million in coverage and plans starting around $30 a month, protecting your family can feel a whole lot more doable. Peace of mind should not be complicated, so take 5 minutes to get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/Candace. Again, that's ethos.com/Candace. Application times may vary and rates may vary as well. I also want to remind you guys about PureTalk, because America does not stand for 250 years as a beacon of hope without the brave men and women who are willing to put their lives on the line to defend her. To honor those patriots, PureTalk and its customers will raise $250,000 for America's Warrior Partnership by the end of July. This essential foundation stands on the front lines of preventing veteran suicide, and they do this by covering the basics: housing, access to VA benefits, transportation, and counseling. The tangible things that give veterans a hand up. And here's how you can help. When you switch your cell phone service to PureTalk this month, you'll have an opportunity to round up to support America's Warrior Partnership. PureTalk will match that donation until they hit $250,000. So enjoy unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited high-speed data for just $34.99 a month, which is a fraction of the big wireless companies, and you can be proud to partner with a wireless company that shares your values. Head to puretalk.com/Owens to make the switch to PureTalk. Again, that's puretalk.com/Owens to start saving. I honestly just can't get over just like how in our face it is sometimes with the way that they choose a name. Like, I'm going to name my yacht, I'm going to name it Pluto. Another name for Hades. I'm going to name my company Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards the underworld. Then all of a sudden we look up and we're like, everything is satanic, and then they gaslight us. Like, no, it's just a name. I just wanted to name it Beelzebub, and nothing we're doing here is wrong. Well, sorry, you just got caught in a massive human trafficking scandal of this organization. No. It's not true. It's the entire thing is crazy. I could have done an entire series, by the way, on the various scandals that DynCorp is involved in. I don't believe that Trump is surrounded by all of these people and he's just like a victim of it. There's just something not right about the timing of the Epstein files, Trump's response to the Epstein files, the speed at which Charlie was suddenly dead. A lot going on, a lot being exposed. Anyway, I do want to switch gears here because sometimes I just see a story in pop culture that just really gets my gears going. And this time, my former executive producer sends me this article about, and it's so on point, by the way, because right now we're doing my book, which is Make Him a Sandwich, right? Where I tackle feminism. And in many ways, we're always presented with two options. Like these are your two options of feminism, right? You can be this or you can be that. And I can say the same thing about politics. You can be a Democrat or you can be a Republican. And I don't really feel like any of those two are actually the answers, that there's any separation. And with feminism, one of the things that made me want to write the book was seeing the rise of women who were proud to be hoes. Like this was something that just sort of, I was going, where are we going with this? How is this going to be beneficial in the end? It just became so extreme where we were being told that like taking off your top, walking down the street naked, talking about how many men you sleep with was supposed to be empowering. I cannot think of a more degrading article that I have read in recent years than the one that was recently published by Emily Ratajkowski, who I wrote about in my book as one of these emblems of modern feminism, the one that she just published for The Cut. And so I just need you guys, we actually couldn't take much out of this article because we keep this show PG. We know we have a lot of teenagers who watch this, and it's so filthy that I don't even want to encourage you to read it unless you are really preparing your mind to know that it's pornographic in nature. The title of the article is Mother Effer. Emily Ratajkowski was married, gave birth. If you don't know who she is, I'm going to briefly she's a woman who's literally known for taking her clothes off. She's a quote unquote model who burst onto the scene just being butt naked. Not kidding, just butt naked in the Robin Thicke Blurred Lines video. And after that, they now try to pretend she's a model and she's walking in Victoria's Secret, when in reality, what she's selling is her body at all times. And now she's a mother and she's doing this. And like I said, I don't have enough words available to describe to you how degrading this article is. You know, her and her husband got divorced very quickly. She gave birth. They were separated within a year, I believe. And she is basically writing this article, trying to make it seem like it's empowering to explain how she then intentionally and mindfully, and in her own words, became a slut because she wanted to show men that she didn't need them. And it is very graphic, talking about all of the men that she has slept with and how she intentionally puts her body out in front of the world, even describing, and I'm going to show you this moment, how she dresses to go pick up her 5-year-old son from school pickup. Okay, I'm going to read this little portion for you if you want to pull this up. The character that I had learned to embody, after my divorce in my period of compulsively dating was a villain, poison ivy, Catwoman, sexual but scary. And she drank gin martinis, many, many gin martinis. She was not tragic. She was nothing close to a victim. No one needed to feel sorry for her. In fact, they should all be jealous. Okay, so she's trying to turn being a slut into a superhero character, like a super slut, I guess. And that's the entire nature of this article that she's written, as she describes the men that she's been with and how she sort of prides herself in the middle of this article. She gives herself a pat in the back because she's like, well, not only do I sleep with them, but then I leave their bedroom immediately and I make sure that I'm back home and I let the babysitter go home because in the morning time I want to be with my son and I love my son. So it's nice to wake up and be there. And at nighttime I turn into this super slut hero character. This is the article. I'm not kidding, you guys, but it's incredibly graphic and pornographic. And here's another piece of the article. I decided to F my way into a new kind of woman. I wanted to destroy the Madonna, the special girl that I had worked so hard to be before an 8-pound baby had torn my nether regions into two and replaced her with that's another word for slut that she has there that I don't want to say. And she writes, quote, let's give them a taste of their own medicine. I joke with friends. I thought I would get some great sleeping around and a few funny stories on the way to go. Quote, one of her friends says to her, sometimes you're like a 40-year-old divorcee and other times you're like a 22-year-old slut, my friend said, after watching me in shorts and lip liner navigate the cliquish politics of school drop-off. Was I punitive, making many men suffer for the crimes of one? I honestly didn't care. So she's intentionally underdressing to pick up a 5-year-old child because she wants to punish men by having them look at her in short shorts and, I don't know, lip gloss and lip liner. When I tell you this article, it's so disturbing to me that anybody could read this and think that she is doing anything other than ruining her life. I felt so passionate about this. And again, it's because we're reading my book right now, Make 'em a Sandwich, and I describe these two competing and both wrong viewpoints of modern feminism. One, which encourages women to behave like sluts and tells them that that's empowering. And it's incredibly degrading. She just degrades herself in this entire article. And in the process, ruins her own life. I cannot think through what man in their right mind is going to want to seriously date, let alone marry, the person who published this article. This is not someone that you can then take home to mom. So why did she do it? Right? This comes from a place of severe, in my view, severe depression. Severe depression, maybe an extension of having some like postpartum disorder. She described having a pretty traumatic birth. And like now she has decided that the way that she's going to reclaim her power is by sleeping through half of Manhattan and writing about it in a way that genuinely makes her sound like a prostitute, but at least in a prostitution scenario, the woman is going home with money. She's going home with nothing. And I just really want to encourage in the strongest terms possible for the young women who listen to this podcast, very many of them who listen to this podcast, not to take this route in life. This leads to absolute misery. It's passive aggressive. I think she's probably arrived at the conclusion that many men will sleep with her, and they will continue to do that because men are designed that way, but will not take her seriously as a life partner. But I think the part that upset me the most is knowing that she is a mother, and I can't imagine anything more embarrassing for her innocent young 5-year-old son than to read when he's able to, he's 5, but to read when he's able to the story of how his mother fancied herself some sort of a superwoman at night because she was super sleeping her way through her entire contact list. I mean, it is such a stunning piece and an example of everything that is wrong with modern feminism, everything that is wrong with this idea that you choose between two extremes and one is going to make you happy. I know I'm a conservative. I believe in family. I believe in monogamy. I know that we've shifted away from those times. I think it's been a disaster, but she stands as a stark example of the misery that can unfold if you go too far the other way. So I had to rant on that because when I read the article, my team, their jaws were on the floor when they read it. I was like, I feel like I am abusing you, even making you read this because it's so pornographic in nature. And truly, I hope she gets the help she needs because I have been saying for a long time, there should be a clinic for women like this. And whatever she has going on, it is positively clinical. And that woman is miserable, 35 years old, and she's miserable. For no reason, by the way, has had a lot of things handed to her in life for being an attractive woman and hasn't quite figured out what it is that makes you happy. And it's not being attractive. Anyway, I wanted to very quickly riff on that and just tell you how I felt about that article because I know it had gone viral. We'll be right back after a quick break. All right, you guys, are you doing all the right things for your health, but still wondering if there's more that you could be doing to support your healthy aging? That's why I am so excited to tell you guys about Fatty 15. It is a science-backed supplement built around C15, the first essential fatty acid that's been discovered in more than 90 years. C15 was originally studied by Dr. Stephanie Van Watson while working with the U.S. Navy to improve the health of aging dolphins. Researchers later found that low levels of C15 may impact how well our cells age and function over time. That's important because healthy cells are the foundation for long-term wellness, including energy, sleep, metabolism, and even cognitive health. Fatty 15 was developed to support healthy aging for all, from kids to parents to grandparents. That's why award-winning Fatty 15 is now available as pure capsules, delicious apple mint gummies for teens and adults, and yummy berry blast gummies for kids. Fatty 15 is on a mission to support healthy aging for all, so you can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by heading over to fatty15.com/Candace and using code Candace at checkout. Again, that's fatty15.com/Candace. I also want to remind you guys about Loreto Publications because have you ever felt like you are searching for real spiritual truth, but you're not sure who to trust anymore? I've definitely been there, which is why I want to share something that I find incredibly valuable, which is a traditional Catholic book company called Loreto Publications. And their entire mission is simple: spreading the truth of the Catholic faith. What I love about them is the quality and the authenticity. They publish some of the most accurate editions of scripture available in English, including the 1859 Haydock edition of a Douay-Rheims Bible. And this isn't just a Bible. It's packed with thousands of footnotes and commentary from the early church fathers and doctors. It really brings the faith to life in a deeper way, but it doesn't stop there because they've got everything from Bible commentaries, books on Mary and the saints, church history, philosophy, catechisms, missals, prayer books, even works that dive into the Catholic social teaching and the kingship of Christ in today's world. So if you've been wanting to understand what the apostles and early church actually taught and what Christ is King really means, head to loretopubs.org. Again, that's loretopubs.org. All right, you guys, top comment from yesterday's episode, top 2 comments. This person, Israel, Texas, writes, a woman with a headband in her basement doing more investigation of Charlie's death than the entire Federal Bureau of Investigation cannot be reality. Oh, it can be, because the Federal Bureau of Investigation is not investigating. They've never investigated. They've always been corrupt, you guys. They were established to be corrupt. They've been corrupt. They're just like a little corrupt federal police force. And there's never been a time where you're like, wow, the FBI was really doing good work for 10. They never were involved in anything bad. It's its entire history, right? And like I said, everything about Kash Patel makes my skin crawl. He's obviously up to no good. It's so obvious. I mean, he's not even trying. He's angry. He's lashing out. Exactly as he was presented in that Atlantic article, that's what he gives off. He gives off like he's temperamental, like he's not really in control, and like somebody else is pulling the strings. And also remarkably petty. I will say that. I mean, to have the FBI basically tone policing the internet. We don't like that you said denied. Well, then why'd you deny it? Like, why did you deny it by 20 days and tell me that it's because it's too complicated? We're asking you for 3 days of someone's schedule. Completely ridiculous. Sarah Bryan writes, oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Little Bird wrote, It's actually much better that you came to this from the long way round. You built your case from the ground up, Candace, and now all the dots are connecting. Explosive indeed. Yes, I really do believe that there is something to the explosive theory, and I did go my own route and get there. I saw all the theories that were out there, and I didn't feel comfortable in engaging in them. I felt like my focus was best due going over the timeline, going over what was happening in Charlie's life, seeing what was happening with Israel, finding turning point, lying at every turn throughout this to fully comprehend why they would be tied to Israel in such a regard. And I have arrived that it is a very viable theory, like I said, that makes all of the other pieces come together that just don't make sense. They suddenly do make sense when you believe or consider that an explosive went off under his chest, including the way his body moves. If you have the stomach to watch it, you can see it just looks like something comes up. That's why I initially thought someone shot him from underneath, was just looking at the motion of how he was moving. Anyway, I think we are inching closer there. So we'll see if more people are writing us, and we'll take time, as we always do, to research every angle of it. Comments from today's episode. Nabby writes, thank you, Nabby, by the way. That's a very kind tip. We all appreciate everything that you do, Candace. Please stay safe. Worse things have happened to those who have said less. My family and I are praying for you and your family. The question I hate to ask, on the basis of your findings from afar, how does this all happen secretly right under Charlie's nose? In my years of following him, he is no fool. Yes, well, I can tell you he trusted the people that were around him. I mean, it happened under my nose technically too, right? I mean, I never suspected Tyler Boyer to be the person living the kind of life that he was living. I didn't know any of this stuff about Tyler Boyer. I didn't know any of the stuff about Andrew Colvett when I was working there, when I was on tour with Charlie. And so it's having faith in people. Most of all, your wife. And like I said, Charlie saved himself for marriage, and the Garden of Eden was lost to a woman. I truly believe that I know that Charlie fell for Erica, and that would have been sort of his first real relationship in life. And there's a lot that can happen. I mean, not everything is mental, right? You are having a physical connection to somebody, and that can transform. As a husband, you want to make your wife happy, right? If you have a Christian perspective and you believe that you married a godly woman and you're going to let her be in the driver's seat, everybody knows that. That's kind of, women, as they say, are you're going to be, that's going to be your number one confidant for any man is going to be his wife, and vice versa. And so if she's saying to him, lean more into faith, and he wants to make his wife happy, and he lets her get involved in the faith department as he did, and she's bringing in all these pastors, why would he be suspicious of that? Why would he be like, well, I need to deep dive? He was just, yay, it's evangelical, mega church. I love the Lord. And so I trust my wife loves the Lord. And that's it. It just takes trusting the wrong people. And Charlie was definitely naive in those ways. I was naive when I got into politics. I consider myself a naturally suspicious person. And look how much I believed in Trump. It can happen to anybody. It really can happen to anybody. Sarah Bryan writes, Candace, you are the bravest woman I've ever seen. I pray for you every day and for your family, and only the best can come to you for all that you have done. You have got to be the best friend that Charlie ever had. Keep going. Keep searching for the answer. I am sure that you will find it. May God bless you. Thank you so much. And I'm just grateful to everyone who's contributed in this investigation, and that people have remained interested. There's something about it that I think renders us all unsafe if someone like Charlie Kirk can be taken out in broad daylight, and there can be so much collusion to cover it up. Amongst the people who he put into power. Like that renders none of us safe, and that's why I keep going, because I already know I'm unsafe if Charlie's out of this world and this is happening. It means like the devil's got us. You know what I mean? It means that this country is being run by satanic people, in my view. What about yours? James the Least writes, could the White House crash out over the files have anything to do with Trump suddenly finding himself on Bibi's bad side for walking away from Iran? Crash over the files. No, I mean, the White House, that is the beginning. I think the timeline here is wrong. The New York Times was recounting everything that happened at the beginning of the administration when Trump began to crash out over the files. Like, that was happening as soon as he came in. Obviously, we all know, we followed the Binder episode. Pam Body's not even in the White House anymore. And that took place long before the Iran thing, so I don't think it does. Tony Hill writes, hi, Candace. I was shocked hearing you talk about Corey Comparator the other day, because I just looked him up 2 weeks ago, wondering if there was something more to that, but I didn't think that there would be. We love and support you in all that you do. Go Max. I love how naturally that story came to me. I always suspected that something was weird, obviously, about the Thomas Crooks story, but I never thought that we would get to that point of tying it all in and potentially having something to even to do with Charlie's assassination. So I'm always so grateful to you guys that send me these stories and these things that you're really passionate about. Anna writes, your show is my favorite part of the day. I love what you do and what you stand for. Thank you. Also, 3 out of 4 of Jeffrey Epstein's grandparents were born in Russia. I'm going to guess in the Pale of Settlement in Russia. The other one, Lithuania. Okay, that was correct. Does anybody know anything about them? I could guess. Probably had something to do with the radical groups that assassinated the Tsar. I'm just throwing it out there. They were all freaks and Satanists. RN Explorer writes, Candace, I feel you are so close to exposing it all. Your bravery is inspirational. Your friendship and loyalty to Charlie is a great example of how we should all be to each other. I pray for you, your family, and for all of you to remain safe. Keep the prayers up, guys. I know that they keep us safe, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I just want my kids to grow up in a world that's not run by people who protect pedophiles and human traffickers. Is that so much to ask? I just feel like we are asking for so little. Like, can you guys not rape kids? And they're like, sorry, you're asking for too much. The burden is too great. Okay. The burden's too great. They can't not do that. Can you not protect people who traffic minors? Sorry, you're asking for too much. The burden is too great. Okay. Like, this is where we're at right now in the world. They can't do it. They cannot do that. Your request has been denied. The Assassinator writes, battle bun. And is that a maroon button down? Actually, it's an aubergine button down. We were just talking before I went on air about the differences in the English, proper London boy English, like I married, and American. And so many times that people will tell me that I'm mispronouncing something, and you don't realize what goes on in this household with American pronunciations versus English pronunciations and words that my husband just says, we created the language, so we're saying it correctly. And aubergine is what they call eggplant. So I say it's aubergine, and in this house, we've agreed to call eggplant aubergine. We just have to come to an agreement. It's like we're constantly fighting the Revolutionary War in this house and just having to come to an agreement. And so, but aubergine does sound better than eggplant. Like, why are we calling it an eggplant? We actually looked it up like 10 minutes before we went on air. It's because the original eggplant, the variety that was sent to America, the original aubergines, kind of resembled the shape of an egg. So if you look it up, that's the reason why we are the only people in the world who call eggplants as opposed to aubergine. It's very basic, but to make you feel good, something I learned about my husband, this is crazy. He didn't know what cursive was. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know what cursive is? And this woman that's helping us with homeschooling was like, what do you mean you don't know what cursive is? Like, what do you guys call it in the UK? Guess what they call cursive in the UK? Joined up. Joined up. They call it joined up. I don't even know what to say to that. I'm like, I thought Americans, we were doing it ghetto, but we're just like, oh, look at this, looks joined up. Like, that's crazy. Cursive sounds way more proper than joined up. So I'm just really proud of us because on one thing, we definitely beat them and we sound much more proper. And I don't know why they're calling it joined up writing, but that sounds really ghetto. I love you guys in England, but that sounds really ghetto. The Assassinator writes, power pony. Battle Bun, yeah, is that, okay, let me finish your comment. Battle Bun, is that a maroon button down? Thank you so much for continuing to fight for truth and answers. You have truly become a voice for the people. Candace, I pray for God's guidance, power, and grace to be ceaseless. Christ is King. We need you, a voice for the people, and we need you to find a way to take back our tax money, the incredible amount of tax money that goes into supporting evil. I want my money back. Go Max, Candace, Christ is King. Hail Mary, full of grace. Yes to all of that. I mean, it has been, we're learning a lot, man. We are learning a lot. And I do think information is power. I do sense desperation in what they are doing. They are losing control, not gaining it. The more they lean into the evil, the more they lean into the lies, the more they expose themselves. Like, we have reached the tipping point, you know? And so that's something to be positive about. I remain happy every day. I laugh every day. And just remember that that was something that Charlie always wanted, for people to be happy warriors. I know the entire messaging of his podcast is completely different. They seem agitated all the time, and they're screaming and they're telling us don't ask questions. But everything that we are doing has represented a better legacy for Charlie Kirk than the people who inherited his empire, so to speak. Anyway, you guys, we will see you on Monday. Proud about the merch.